Hi VC, how's it going? I'm going to show you today some of my recent vinyl finds. Stuff I picked up in February and March. I've been trying to cut down on how much I'm buying, not from an expense point of view, but from a storage point of view. If I carry on buying at the rate I am going to run out of space. I am weeding the collection on a virtually daily basis, but I can't sell the stuff quite as quickly as I'm weeding it. So I had thought that what I'd do is limit myself to maybe a couple of purchases a month and just buy grails. But what is a grail? I find stuff for £1, which does it for me far more than stuff I see people spending £200 or £300 for. So it's a tough one. And in all truth, I could never stick to it anyway, because if I see albums when I'm out and about that look interesting, I've got to pick them up. But yeah, I think the solution for me is just to keep on weeding and making sure my collection is, as they say, all killer no filler. I've got stuff here today. Some of it I would absolutely call killer. Other stuff, perhaps it'll stick in the collection for a while and we'll see how we get on with it. But I'll start off with one which is perhaps falling into that latter category. And it's an album by Stack called Above All. This band was from the US. The album originally came out in 1969 and it came out on the Charisma label, but no, not that Charisma label, completely different label. Presumably an independent label, I'm not sure. This is an A Karma reissue. And the chances of finding an original are pretty slim. On Discogs, it's never been sold. And 19 people claim to own the original, but 496 people want it. So I would imagine even if you found it, it would be a 4-figure album. Is it worth 4 figures? No. I paid just over 10 quid for this. And I think that's £10 well spent. I have been enjoying this album. It's basically bluesy garage Psych, but with a heavy influence of The Who on here. Big clattering Keith Moon type drums, Pete Townsend style power chords, you know the kind of thing. And they open the album with a track called Poison Ivy, which is the Lieber and Stoller standard, and they approach that in a very Who kind of a style. And that's kind of the way the album goes on the whole. There's decent vocals on here, some really good guitar. Backing vocals are proficient but slightly naive, and I guess that's a little bit like The Who as well. If you think about the Who's early singles, slightly kind of naive, snotty teenage backing vocals. I do like this album, but there are some weaknesses. There's a third track on the first side called Da Blues, which, yeah, you guessed it, it's almost 7 minutes of boring blues jamming, which I can completely do without. I mean, they could have put a couple of originals in there and made this a lot more interesting. First track on side 2, Every Day, reminds me again of The Who with a little bit of blue cheer chucked in. There's some kind of manic Chuck Berry style guitar playing on that, which is very good, but again, the track outstays its welcome. 6.5 minutes is just too long. It just needs the fat trimming out of it. But the highlight on this album, and of all the tracks on this album as good as this would be a 5-star album and probably worthy of Grail status. It's a track called Valleys, which unfortunately is only 2 minutes 47 seconds long, but it's a great heavy Psych number. There's kind of mystical sounding backing vocals, a really strong lead vocal, and some superb fuzz guitar. So yeah, this is a bit of a loose and ponderous album at times. Very reliant on The Who for its sort of blueprint, I guess. It's not classic, but if all of it was as good as Valleys, it could have been. So 10 quid well spent, not worth 4 figures. Then next up was now I got from a West London market stall. That's all I'm saying. I'm not revealing where this place is because I don't want you all going along and clearing out the good stuff. And this stall, he has a mixture of kind of reasonably priced 60s, 70s psychedelia, hard rock, prog, funk, soul, jazz, at competitive prices. And then he has most of his store, which is made up of albums which are £1 each. And I got some great bargains from there. This, though, was one of the ones that was the reasonably priced, in the reasonably priced sort of prog section. And it's Brian Auger's Oblivion Express and his second Wind album. You know Brian Auger, I'm sure. Famous Hammond organ player. This is no exception. Plays a Hammond organ on this. Fantastic player. Bit in the shade of Keith Emerson and John Lord and people like that, but he's every bit their equal, I would say. Plays quite a lot of electric piano on here as well, which is a nice touch. 3 members of the band here would later go on to be in the Average White Band, so a bunch of Scottish guys. Most notable, I suppose, Robbie McIntosh on drums, and Jim Mullen on guitar, both superb musicians. But actually, for me, the most notable is Alex Ligertwood, the vocalist, who is immense on this. I've heard some people criticising his performance because he's just too rock for what is essentially a proggy jazz fusion album. But I love his voice, and he never sinks into aimless screeching. He's always got a controlled voice, even when he is really going for it. Reminds me a lot of Willie Zefern, who sang vocals on the 3rd Captain Beyond album and on the Pipe Dream album with Tim Bogert, and also on Gary Moore's G-Force album. I love Willie Zefern's vocals, and Alex Ligertwood, very similar to me. At times he sounds almost like a harder sounding Steve Winwood as well. So if that's your bag, you could probably really enjoy his performances on here. There's a lot of funky bass lines on here. Tasty, funky guitar. Lots of wah-wah. Some absolute searing hot solos. You got tracks like Don't Look Away, which has a real relaxed funk vibe to it. A real hypnotic groover. And there's some slight psych leanings on that. Probably from the echo effect on the guitar. Probably nothing more than that. But it's got a real nice feel to it. Somebody Help Us is another groover with killer Hammond organ on it. And then Just You, Just Me has almost like a blaxploitation funk feel to it. Lots of wah-wah guitar and a hi-hat groove on that one. So yeah, this is a jazz fusion album. It's progressive, but it's funky as hell. And I have been loving this album. Really great stuff. 15 quid well spent. And next up was an album I got on that market stall, and this was one of the £1 finds, and I had no idea what it was, and I was picking stuff up thinking I can trade these in at some point and get something I really want if this doesn't hit the spot. This one really hit the spot. I mean, I saw it and I thought, that looks like it's either going to be some kind of folk thing or some heavy metal album, and what it actually is superior stoner rock. I love this album. I've been playing this probably more than anything else I've picked up over the last couple of months. This is a limited numbered LP. This is 117, number 117 of 300. Came with a copy of the album on CD as well for £1. They're from Northern Ireland. This came out in 2012. I think this is the only thing they ever released, and that's a crime because this is such a good album. Don't know whether I'm imagining it, but is this a concept album? Could be. Seems to be telling stories from Irish folklore, I would guess. The performances are fantastic on this. Rage of the Goddess, the first track, first side, begins with an almost Irish folk rap, and then it settles into this chunky, clutch style, heavy stoner rock groove. And it brings to mind Rage Against the Machine as well. So really powerful stuff. And the songwriting is really good. And it doesn't get boring, this album. So many stoner rock albums are just on one level. They stay the same, and it just, yeah, initially the riffs sound monolithic and exciting, but they don't go anywhere. There's no light and shade, there's no dynamics. This is different. This is so different. The title track, Hail to the River Gods, the vocal sounds like a pissed off pirate. It's almost like a buccaneer version of Clutch, but with a Celtic feel. And I must admit, first time I listened to this, I was thinking, what the hell is this? But it just got under my skin, and I just love it now. Thon's Strange Brew, the last track on the first side, has a riff worthy of early Metallica. Really, really heavy, punchy riff. First track on second side, it doesn't even have a title on the sleeve. It just has this strange symbol. But apparently that means, what does it mean? The Flower of Life. And again, that's another brutal Clutch type, brooding chugger of a tune, which has a real Celtic swagger to the second half. Wake the Dead as a simplified kind of Black Sabbath riff to it. And then perhaps my favourite track on the album, Blind Side of the Moon, which closes the album, has a kind of Vincent Price type narration, another brutal riff, and then just light and shade and rhythmic changes, and it's superb. The whole album clocks in at about 25 minutes. It does fly by, but oh my God, I love this record. Fantastic. I just don't know how this band went unnoticed, or perhaps they're well known and I just didn't notice them. But great purchase, especially for £1. Then next is an album I picked up at my local record fair. Bought it new and sealed, and I'd been looking at a copy online, which would have been £15 plus postage. This one I got for £10 new and sealed, and it's Twink and the Sitar Service. And this was a record store day release in 2023. Comes in a gatefold sleeve. And also has this rather fetching psychedelic Twink insert. And the Sitar Service were an established band. I don't think they'd released any music on record previously, but they were an established band, and their drummer, I think, went off to university and asked Twink if he'd sit in on drums for them for this album and then for some live shows, which he did. And it's fantastic. I mean, again, sometimes these sort of sitar type rock albums can get a little bit one-dimensional when there's sitar on every single track. This manages to avoid that pitfall for the most part. It starts with a cover of Steve Winwood's I'm a Man, which has a real, as you'd expect, a groovy sitar Psych feel to it. It has funky drumming, organ stabs, and it's a really great listen. I mean, it's a fun listen. And all the tracks on this, I think, all the tracks on this are covers. So they just do covers of 60s and 70s rock tunes. So you get Hendrix's Voodoo Child, Yardbird's Heart Full of Soul, Pink Floyd Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun, which is fantastic on this. There's a sitar and vocal drone on that, which really lends an air of menace to the track. Absolutely love it. There are no lyrics as such on this, so you're not hearing the original lyrics. They're kind of authentic to what Hindustani ragas would be like, in that the vocalist sings the names of the notes he's singing, which I think is a traditional thing in Hindustani kind of classical music. And certainly I know with tabla playing, when you're playing tabla, each tabla beat has a name, a word associated with it, so you can actually sing the beats at the same time as playing them. So you haven't got lyrics as such on this. You have these, what sounds to Western ears like these random vocal sounds, but it works really well. So you get cover a whole lot of love with these strange vocal utterances instead of the lyrics. You have to hear it to quite get it, but a really good find. Very happy to have got that one. Then from the same record fair, I picked up an album which I've been after for quite some time. Not quite sure why, because every review I read of it either damns it with faint praise or completely destroys it. But I must have heard something online at some point, thought, yeah, that sounds like something I would be interested in. And it's the self-titled album by Street, which came on the Verve Forecast label. There you go. And this was a band out of New York City, I believe. Although they sound far more West Coast to me. Sound like they're in that San Franciscan folk psych vein, I guess. Now, I've seen some reviews, one in The Endless Trip, where one of the reviewers is completely slagging this off, saying there's nothing psych about it. It sounds like Nana Muscuri or something. But to me, this is subtle. It's subtly psychedelic. It's got real period feel to it. The first track, which has a fairly ridiculous title, Multi-Levular Conversational Tightrope Walking Shoes. It's 60s soulful pop with horns. The singer, whose name is Anya Cohen, has a beautiful voice. I love it. I think I probably prefer it to Grace Slick's voice. I mean, Grace can get a bit shrill sometimes, let's be honest. Anya has a lot of Grace Slick to her vocals, but she also reminds me of Bobby Gentry a bit. And I've seen some reviews comparing her to Stevie Nicks, and there is that sort of warble to her voice, so I get that as well. So you got that 60s period pop feel. But then you get a song like Some Thoughts of a Young Man's Girl, which is basically an anti-war ballad, and it's beautifully performed. I love it. The vocal on that is fantastic. And then it starts to turn into Psych. There's a medley of 2 tracks at the end, If I Needed Someone and Tomorrow's a Long, Long Time. So a George Harrison track followed by a Dylan track. And they feature fuzz guitar. They have quite a West Coast San Francisco kind of psych folk feel to them. And the Dylan cover has a kind of, well, it has horns on it, which bring to mind Shocking Blues, The Butterfly and I, which is a track that I think is superb. And it also has this kind of Toy Town psych clockwork beat going on. So that is an absolute highlight. But perhaps the best track on here, second track, side 2, What a Strange Town. And that has a real moody, easy swagger to it. Unusually or uniquely on this album, it has a narrated sort of male vocal section. And it has strings on here, very tastefully done. And a lot of the track, and it's 6 minutes long, it's taken up with this kind of hypnotic backbeat, but with loads of sound effects over it. You know, snoring and alarm clocks and traffic noises and dogs barking, all that kind of thing, which has been done to death, I know, but this is done so well. Love, love, love that track. And there's a track called There's One Kind Favour, which is like an R&B Jefferson Airplane with some great acidic fuzz guitar on. So don't be put off by the reviews. If you see this at the right price, definitely pick it up. You can no doubt listen to it online. But I love it. I think it's a great, great album. Then for a charity shop find, and this was really a find. One of my local charity shops, I don't know who does their pricing. It's most bizarre. They had a Father John Misty album in there on coloured vinyl. And yeah, it's vaguely collectible, but it had £48 on it. And that was at the front of the sack. And I thought, well, there's not going to be anything here I'm going to want to buy. But there was. The next record and stack was this, which I paid £4 for. It's a Zoton second album. It's in pretty much mint condition. And on Discogs, I think the cheapest copy of this on sale at the moment is £77. So they had this for £4 and £48 on the Father John Misty album. Don't get it. Don't get their pricing at all. But I'm not complaining. I bought this again thinking I can offload this if it doesn't really do it for me. I got the first Zootons album on CD, enjoyed it at the time, haven't really explored them any further. This is fantastic. I mean, the best known track on it is Valerie, which everyone knows because Amy Winehouse covered it. But it's not the best track, even though it's the best known. This is, I guess if you don't know Zootons, this is energetic indie pop. But what makes it stand out is the the alto and tenor sax of Abby Harding. And I know a lot of people think horns and rock or popular music don't mix. I don't have a problem with it when it's done right, and it's really done right on this album. Makes the track so much more interesting. Songwriting on this is great anyway. The highlights, I guess, on here would be Why Won't You Give Me Your Love, which I think is probably that second best known track on here. And that, to me, it kind of steals the riff from Depeche Mode's Personal Jesus. But it weds it to this kind of glam rock gang chorus. Really, really great tune. Elsewhere, you've got sort of nods to Supergrass and the Kaiser Chiefs. Both decent bands. I love Supergrass. Kaiser Chiefs, not a bad pop band. But the Zotons just add this level of class to what they do. There's a great track, final track actually, which is again a huge highlight, and that's I Know I'll Never Leave. And that's a languid, bluesy track. Bluesy guitar, bluesy feel to the verses. There's a really nice ascending, descending riff before the chorus. Superb drumming throughout, and this great sinuous saxophone solo from Abby Harding. So check out I Know I'll Never Leave, and you may well decide that you're a fan as well. There's the band. So £4 well spent. Who says you can't find good stuff in charity shops anymore? Next up is a record I bought. Where did I get this? It's in the Record Tape Exchange, the Music Video Exchange in Notting Hill Gate. And I had just £7 on this. And normally they hugely overprice their stuff and then bring the price down gradually until it's at a more realistic level if it doesn't sell. But this, their starting price was £7, so I snapped it up. Lyft were a East German band, formed and performed during the time of the communist Eastern Bloc. This album's called Mira's Fart, which I did look up what it meant. I've completely forgotten. It's nothing to do with farts, I'll tell you that. It's an odd album, this, and the reviews I've read of this are pretty much on the money in that it starts off a little bit weak and gets stronger. Having said that, the first track, I'm going to attempt to butcher the song titles, but the first track on here is bluesy pop with harmonica, and it's pleasant and it's catchy, but it's not remotely prog, which is what this band is supposed to be. So I actually quite like it, but it's not very representative of the band. The second track, you get some analog synths kicking in. You think, okay, we're in for some prog now, but then turns into sort of a pretty middle of the road ballad, albeit a well played one, but still we're not quite there. Although I have seen suggestions that the lyrics are quite revolutionary in that they were criticising the communist regime, so they're kind of taking their lives in their hands a little bit performing that. But yeah, not a great tune, but it all comes good on the third track, which I will pronounce because it looks easier, Scherbenglas, which brings to mind sort of songs from the Wood era, Jethro Tull. It has those kind of folky vocals, and it has violin and cello on there, so quite minimalist but very atmospheric. And then we really get to the sort of symphonic prog, the last track on side one, Tagesreise, which, like I say, symphonic prog, synths, there's dramatic vocals, there's organs, acoustic guitar. But then halfway through, it switches to this heavy organ riff with these sort of celestial backing vocals. And I'm immediately put in mind of Uriah Heep. And I love Uriah Heep, so that really does it for me. Fans of Eloy, Uriah Heep, Kansas will probably get a lot out of this track. Yeah, that for me is the highlight in this album. Although the first track on side 2, I think it is. No, the title. Yeah, first track on side 2, Mira's Vater, is the one most people cite as the best track. It's 15 minutes long, and parts of it are really good. You get a few minutes of sort of synth washes, and then this dark 70s cop show, blaxploitation, funk groove kicks in, which is fantastic. You get saxophone adding to the moody atmosphere, but then it kind of falls into this kind of slightly meandering symphonic prog, which to me it loses its way slightly, but the majority of the track is great. So yeah, this is a very listenable album for £7. I'm delighted to have it. So yeah, if you cherry pick the best tracks off this, you've got a really decent listen. I have an album here that I've owned twice on CD. I bought it once when it first came out because everyone was making a fuss about it, and it didn't click and I got rid of it. And then people still kept on making a fuss about it, and I picked up a copy second-hand in a charity shop somewhere, and I liked it a bit more but didn't think too much of it. And there's one track on it always wound me up, which is the most well-known track on it, and one that possibly the reason I'm not crazy about it is because everybody who sees themselves as so emotional and kind of singing with feeling covers on Pop Idol and all the other crappy talent shows. Hallelujah by Jeff Buckley, or by Leonard Cohen by way of Jeff Buckley, is a track that I find it hard to listen to without seeing somebody with a sob story on like Simon Cowell's programme. Well, I can't think what that's called now. Not important. But yeah, in Jeff Buckley's hands, it's a much better song, of course. But this is a fantastic album. I mean, I don't need to tell you that. You all know it. And I'm not going to say much about it, apart from the fact that I finally got it on vinyl. And I played it the other day. I thought, what the hell took me so long? Such a good album. His voice is incredible. You can see where Radiohead got part of their sound from. Although I think they're contemporaries really, weren't they? But, it has that kind of Radiohead feel. It has Zeppelin-esque heaviness at times. Brilliant album. I mean, I don't need to tell you, you all own it. I'm the only idiot who didn't. But I also picked up an album from that same West London market stall, which I didn't know at the time because I had no idea what it was. But it really, really reminds me in places of Jeff Buckley. The album is by a band called Black Bud. The album's called From the Sky. And first thing I've got to say, I love the artwork. That's what drew me to it. I paid £1 for this. Didn't know what it was, but I thought, looks interesting. I may as well pick that up, and I can always offload it if I need to. But this is not going anywhere. It is not going anywhere. I love this album. It's on, what label is it on? Independiente. So an indie label for what is billed generally as an indie band, but that is always to me a fairly meaningless term. I mean, it's such a catch-all term, and half the bands described as indie aren't even on independent labels, so I just don't get what it means. The band is a trio. You got your bass, your guitar, and your drums, but you get occasional help from burbling Hammond organ and strings as well. The guitars are very much post-grunge. It's a mix of Radiohead and Jeff Buckley, both musically and vocally. The production is fantastic. It starts off, first track, Barefoot Dancing, which is a yearning Radiohead-esque song. You have moments which sound a bit like Muse. I think second track, which is called 158. That sounds similar to early Muse to me before they got too progressive. So you got your sort of loud, quiet guitar type deal going on. The third track, Switch, has chiming guitars, soaring cello, and is totally anthemic. Again, Heartbeat. Fourth track is a bit of a highlight. Very Jeff Buckley sounding, impassioned vocals, splashy cymbals, heavy drums, noisy guitars. I love it. Then I think possibly my highlight on this is first track on side 2 called Sitting by the River, which it's chilled. It has a clean bluesy guitar tone. Beautiful vocals again, really tasteful string accompaniments. It's just a classy ballad with balls. It is fantastic. And then they follow that with a track called Forever, which almost has a Tex-Mex swagger to it. I think I can hear accordion in the background on the sort of post-chorus vocals. I could imagine mariachi trumpets working well on the tune. It's absolutely brilliant. Such a good song on such a good record. And it's so difficult to pick highlights because it just gets better. The whole of side 2 is spectacular. You've got Days Passing Away, which it's got like a heavy guitar intro. The riff reminds me of Woman from Tokyo by Deep Purple, but then it leads into an almost Joshua Tree U2 type of a track, but mashed up with this Jeff Buckley feel. And it finishes with a track called Market Streets, which is downbeat, has a beautiful fragile vocal, sort of cascading guitar lines, and then this heavy John Bonham-esque drum beat comes in, these scything Jimmy Page style guitars, and then it shifts back to this mellow vibe towards the end, and it's amazing. This album is superb. This and Triggerman, I paid £2 for those 2 albums, £1 each, and they're just amazing. They're gonna live on my turntable. So I'm very pleased with my recent pickups. I'm glad I didn't limit myself just to Grails because I'd have missed out on some really good stuff. But I do need to keep weeding this collection. But I'm going to keep on buying stuff. I'm going to keep on showing stuff. And hopefully you will comment and let me know what you think. I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye for now.